Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Seattle is going easy on drugs again, and the jobs report is looking good for the economy, and the left can't take it. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
Give you a little peek behind the curtain of how we prep the show here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Ever since I got a KVI email address 4 years ago, somehow I've been magically added to every single media distribution list on the planet. And my favorite are the odd ones. Did you know that Washington is the best place where people wipe down their gym equipment, says a new survey? Did you know that Seattle is the best city for fixing potholes in a timely fashion, assuming your population is under 3 million people? Like the most ridiculous, obscure press releases, I get them. I saw one the other day, and I thought to myself, who would print this stupidity? This is pure clickbait. You know, I went back in my email and I found it. Seattle ranks very high in the U.S. for naked gardening, ahead of World Naked Gardening Day. And I thought, why am I even on this list? How did I get on this list? I don't garden. When I've tried to garden, I kill things. How am I on this list? Well, My Northwest decided to take the press release and turn it into an article. Whether it was for clickbait or whatever the case may be, Seattle ranks number 2 for naked gardening, ahead of World Naked Gardening Day. Is our media so desperate for content and material, they will even print the headlines from World Naked Gardening surveys? Really? Have you ever seen anybody naked garden? Maybe they're talking about the homeless people. I don't think they're gardening just because they're fertilizing somebody's street corner. I don't think that's what's going on. But we know from the amount of real issues we talk about around here that the mainstream media will just grab a press release and print it. They won't ask any questions. They'll just run with it. Sometimes what do? They put their own spin on it to favor the left. Some of the ones that are the absolute worst at shilling for the left are, of course, PBS and NPR. Well, last night, in a new executive order, President Trump has sliced the funding to PBS and NPR. Now, the question remains if he can actually do this. The money is allocated by Congress. What's an executive order? It's to help the executive carry out what the legislature decides. That's what an executive order is. It's to free up resources so you can carry out whatever the legislature votes for. Well, the legislature hasn't voted to defund NPR and PBS. They have to do that. Otherwise, all that money comes rushing back. Now, I predict if this actually goes forward, Mike, you're going to see a ratings drop for NPR and PBS. You know why? They won't have the marketing to advertise as much as they do right now, to promote as much as they do right now, to get the clicks that they do right now, because they have tons of money to throw at things. NPR, their stuff is always very well produced, very well put together. They won't have the money for that anymore. They're going to have to do what we do here at KVI. Get ads, get sponsors, get advertising, and work with a budget, knowing that the federal government is not coming to bail you out. You want to say back in the 1960s or 70s when there was like 4 TV stations, that you needed an NPR, that you needed a PBS, maybe I can hear the argument. Maybe. Nowadays, when you have a gajillion channels and social media, you can get your news from anywhere with whatever spin you want. Why are we still paying for this? Especially when stations like PBS have The Muppet Show and Sesame Street and the Children's Television Workshop, which the royalties, the merchandising from those outlets brings in so much money, it's criminal that you guys are taking taxpayer money to pay for this stuff. So President Donald Trump signed an executive order directing the end of federal funding for NPR and the PBS. The order cites concerns over journalistic bias and calls public funding of these organizations outdated and incompatible with principles of neutrality in news reporting. Just from the Jewish world for a second, we say that PBS is the Palestinian Broadcasting Service because they hate Israel so much. And we say that NPR is the National Palestinian Radio because they hate Israel so much. So, yeah, their bias is very, very clear and very, very obvious. The order instructs the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which allocates federal funds to NPR and PBS, to halt both direct and indirect financial support. According to the order, this policy shift stems from the belief that public broadcasting no longer serves its intended purpose in a media landscape that has become diverse and saturated with alternative news sources. According to the White House statement accompanying the order, unlike in 1967, when CBP was established, today the media landscape is filled with abundant, diverse, and innovative new news options, making government funding of news media outdated, unnecessary, and corrosive to journalistic independence. The administration argued that NPR and PBS have drifted far from the nonpartisan mission outlined in the CBP's founding statute and are now biased outlets that prop up a leftist agenda. They are 1,000% correct. Now, the statute explicitly prohibits political bias, stating that CBP must remain non-political in nature and may not contribute to or otherwise support any political party. The executive order contends that both NPR and PBS routinely violate this mandate by promoting left-leaning viewpoints and undercutting conservative perspectives. The order argues that government funding of news media in this environment is not only outdated and unnecessary, but corrosive to the appearance of journalistic independence. It also emphasizes that no media organization has a constitutional right to taxpayer subsidies, that the federal government has the discretion to decide how the public money is spent. Now, when you're looking at cutting this funding, what are the examples they use? So the White House actually listed off a whole bunch of them. They said, for example, an NPR editor reportedly found that registered Democrats outnumber Republicans 87-0 among newsroom editorial staff. We remember when we covered that? And NPR's president and CEO dismissing truth as a distraction from the outlet's goals. NPR also discouraged staff from using the term biological sex in reporting on transgender issues, as well as publishing stories defending looting, minimizing crime concerns. The White House also accused NPR of embedding DEI in editorial content. They also refused to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story in the lead-up to the 2020 election, calling it a distraction. Now, you want to get mad at MSNBC or CNN? They don't get taxpayer funding. So that's fine that they did that. They're a private company. Despite findings from FBI, CIA, and Department of Energy pointing to a lab leak origin of COVID-19, NPR long dismissed the notion and declined to explore it. They also called out PBS for its slanted coverage of the 2024 Republican National Convention, which was reportedly 72% negative compared to 88% positive coverage for the Democratic National Convention. Additionally, research cited by the White House indicated that congressional Republicans received 85% negative coverage on PBS's flagship NewsHour program, while Democrats received 54% positive coverage. The statement also noted that over a 6-month period, PBS NewsHour reportedly used the term far right 162 times, but far left only 6 times. So, do you think NPR and PBS should continue to receive your taxpayer funding? Second question, do you think President Trump actually has the authority to cut the funding to NPR or PBS, or do you think Congress actually has to get this done? Let me know what you think. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. I mean, do we really need NPR and PBS parroting the talking points of the left? We got the left for that. Associated Press today had a headline that Trump is holding a massive military parade for his birthday. If you scroll down 3 or 4 paragraphs, what do you actually find out? That no, they're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, but it happens to coincide with Trump's birthday. So the Associated Press, which I actually think is the most biased outlet because they claim that they're nonpartisan and just a wire service, they made up this whole thing and people believed it. People ran with this. Is it the same day as Trump's birthday? Absolutely. That's not the focus. Trump has been talking about this anniversary for years. And in fact, this thing has been delayed multiple times. They weren't even sure it was going to happen. So now it's coming out on Trump's birthday. Here's another one for you. The lamestream media loves to pat themselves on the back. What did we see last weekend at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? At the White House Correspondents' Dinner, we saw them all applauding the guy from Axios who finally admitted that Joe Biden was in cognitive decline. And then they all said, yeah, we could do so much better on that. Yeah, we covered it. Look how we covered it. Woo! You guys ignored it until that debate between him and Trump was so bad, you couldn't ignore it anymore. Well, Emmy nominations are now out. And do you know that CBS got an Emmy nomination for the 60 Minutes Kamala Harris interview, which was edited so much that is now at the center of the $20 billion suit by Donald Trump against Paramount for interfering with an election. So you guys nominated that segment for an Emmy? Well, wait a second. What's this Emmy actually for? Oh, funny. I'm not even making this up. This is actually true. It's in an editing category. Well, that makes sense because that was phenomenal editing. In fact, if you dum-dums hadn't released the trailer in advance of the episode where you see Kamala Harris tripping over her own words, nobody would have known that she was a dummy head who couldn't answer questions. But then when we saw that clip, and then later you run the clip where she seems like she's got her stuff together, that's when people knew something was up because people watched it just to see that clip again. And the media is blowing it in real time right now. What do I mean? We're still talking about Kilmar Abreu Garcia, the MS-13 gang member who was abusing his wife. In fact, she even said he was abusing his wife. There's a new audio recording which has surfaced where she talked about it with 911 and with a judge.
I came to fill out a protective order. I think it was in December. But I didn't show up to the court because his family washed my brain telling me that his dad was sick and not to do it. So I didn't do anything. But after that, it was I would call the police. I have a lot of police reports. And I kept trying to get to the door basement to try to open the door, and then he pushed me. So then when I was able to go outside to get a phone, I called 911 from a disconnected phone. Now they took a long time to get to the house. It was probably 20-30 minutes. So I saw a neighbor walking his dog, and I opened the door and I was like, help. And then when he heard me, he grabbed me from my hair and then he slapped me. And then the neighbor, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to react.
So with regards to that, that's his own wife. That's his own wife saying that he was abusing her. And the Democrats are sticking up for this guy, and the media is calling him the Maryland father, the Maryland man. Wow. I'm reminded of the scene in Ghostbusters 2. Oh, did you back the wrong horse? That's what this is. The entire media and the Democrat Party, you had the Democrats flying down to El Salvador to back this guy. Oh, by the way, same day that thing was released, Fox News got the body camera footage of when Abreu Garcia was pulled over in Tennessee for transporting illegal immigrants. When he got pulled over for it, in the body camera footage, you hear the cops going, yeah, he's smuggling illegals. And when you look at that video, you can clearly see what the guy is doing. But the Democrats absolutely refuse to admit they made any kind of mistake. And the media continues with the false narrative. In fact, you need more proof? Let's talk to the DEA for a second. Here's Lindsey Graham talking to them during a hearing on Capitol Hill just a couple days ago.
Based on your time as a DEA agent in the field, particularly in Mexico, these tattoos are consistent with MS-13 associations.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Do you know of any other set of combinations that would suggest some other organization this represents?
With this particular one, no, sir.
So, he's an MS-13 gang member who abused his wife, who is a human trafficker, who got arrested while he was hanging out with the heads of MS-13, and he had a whole bunch of drugs and cash on his person. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's an MS-13 gang member. Yet the media and the Democrats keep parroting this false Maryland father narrative, this false Maryland man narrative, as opposed to MS-13 gang member. 2 courts said he was a member of MS-13. So why should our taxpayer money go towards supplementing stations that are beyond biased? I get mad enough when we see how much taxpayer money is going to the Seattle Times and other outlets locally. We shouldn't be doing that at all. We shouldn't be paying for that. If you are paying for the media to exist, why would they ever write anything bad about you? Why would they ever challenge you? At that point, they are now reliant on you. And they are now, of course, biased because they're not going to write anything that makes their sugar daddy look bad. I'm shocked the Seattle Times has some of the editorials they do. But it's a little too late, guys. You endorsed all the candidates who hit us with the largest tax increase in Washington history. This is the problem. When you have a media that is not looking out for the best interests of the people of the United States and are only looking out for their own best interests. You know how many reporters I talk to that say they don't ask the hard questions about some of our local politicians because they know they'll get blackballed? I've been blackballed by most of them. In fact, I think at this point, there's nobody in Ferguson's office, Rakedahl's office, in Nick Brown's office, in Bruce Harrell's office who will ever get back to me about anything, ever. Because they know I'll ask the questions that the mainstream media won't, and they don't want to answer them. For example, hey, Nick Brown, today you were posting on social media, you, as the AG of Washington, how illegal immigrants can avoid ICE, and you were trying to help them out. So, you support illegal immigrant criminals being in Washington? So do you have a problem with ICE deporting child murderers, child rapists, child molesters? Do you have a problem with that? If so, why? And then do you not believe in the rule of law because you swore to uphold the Constitution and now you're blatantly violating federal law? He doesn't want to answer that question, so of course he won't come on the show. Hey, Chris Rakedahl, you are threatening school districts with pulling their funding, and then you're getting mad at the Trump administration for threatening to pull your funding. Isn't that hypocritical? Hey, Chris Rakedahl, you have the absolute worst record where schools have plummeted to all-time lows here in Washington while you've been superintendent. Don't you think DEI might have a hand in that? In fact, can you name one school where grades have improved with DEI? I ask these questions, and the lamestream media won't because they are worried about losing their sugar daddies. They are worried about losing access. And when you don't have a media that's doing its job, the majority of Washington votes for somebody like Bob Ferguson. Why? Because the average person in Washington has no idea that this is the guy who worked with Puget Sound Energy to hide how much the Climate Commitment Act was going to increase your utility bills. They have no idea that Bob Ferguson was one of the guys who was absolutely silent when it came to defunding the police. They have no idea that Chris Rakedahl is the one who is most directly responsible for this DEI garbage that's dragging down student scores in Washington, and that 2/3 of the kids in Washington public schools are not at reading level, not at writing level, not at math level. The mainstream media does not report this stuff. They do not ask these questions. So why are our taxpayer funds paying for them to operate? NPR, PBS, should be on the exact same playing field as everybody else in the industry. And guess what? Then you'll see what their ratings are actually like. Because then they don't have this government slush fund to continue spending money on for their programming. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Ben in SeaTac. Ben, what's up?
Hey, well, I would say yes. I want no taxpayer money going to those two outlets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Trump has the authority, but do it anyway and make them jump through all the hoops, tie up the money, as long as possible, cause as much pain as possible. But what I'm really concerned with is Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray are out there trying to blame everything that preemptively on Trump's tariffs that's going to happen because of these tax increases.
Yeah.
And so is Bob Ferguson. He's already out there trying to, blame evil Trump because they're not going to get all the Fed money and that they want because of all their illegal activities that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think we have to respond in a PR campaign by going to their social media, constantly talking with these two senators. If they have it in town hall, we go there. We keep calling them out. This is what the Democrats did here. This it's about the Climate Commitment Act. People are paying way more than they should be for everything, for electricity, gas. If you tax fossil fuels, everything's going to go up more, everything. And they are going to constantly try to cover for them. And so will the fake news, trying to blame every single price increase in this state on tariffs.
Yeah, so here's an example. Here's an example. I'm on Patty Murray's social media right now. I pulled it up while we were talking, okay? And what's fascinating about Patty Murray is I don't see her holding town halls. I see her doing these meetings, which are not advertised in advance, and whoever's her social media manager should be fired. Whatever she's doing with this little handheld mic is stupid. It's the same dumb script everywhere she goes. But every comment is negative. Nobody's saying thank you. Maria Cantwell, has anybody seen her since she got elected? She shows up to campaign when she's running for re-election. They don't have the town halls because, Ben, then people like you and me will show up. Look what happened to Bruce Harrell. He ran a press conference the other day. Jonathan Cho and Hannah Kim from Fox 13 show up to confront him on the scandal in City Hall, and he didn't know how to answer it. That's why they're not holding the town halls. It's like limiting comments on social media. They don't want to be confronted for the fact that they are lying and their terrible records. Because you know what my first question would be? How come you didn't call out Joe Biden for increasing inflation so bad? You, in fact, voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't about inflation. It was about green nonsense, blew out the spending, and caused the inflation spike. But they don't want to answer those questions, which is why they don't return requests for comments from me. Ben, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Looks like everybody on the text line agrees. Cut off NPR, cut off PBS. Hey, you want to make the case to keep them? Be my guest. Give me a call at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, looks like Seattle is trying to go easy on drug dealers, drug addicts, all that stuff. And haven't we done this before with disastrous results? We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Anybody here ever read the Tom Clancy book, Sum of All Fears? That's the one where the movie was really kind of bad with Ben Affleck because they destroyed the plot of the book. The plot of the book is actually not between white supremacist Nazi relics and the U.S. government trying to make a war with Russia. It's actually about war in the Middle East. And one of the opening scenes of the book, Jack Ryan, the main protagonist, goes to the Middle East and he expects the Arabs to be doing what they do and attacking Israel and throwing rocks and suicide bombings and all that. And then they start peacefully protesting. And there's a line where he says, oh, the Palestinians finally figured it out. Nobody likes the violence. So now they might actually have a better chance of getting a deal. That's one of the opening scenes of the book, Sum of All Fears. I wonder if somebody's doing this with the leftist activists. So yesterday, I haven't seen any reports of Mayday damage. I haven't. I really haven't. I haven't seen any reports of vandalism, and I'm shocked because the leftist activist class here in Seattle let an opportunity go by to bash in a Starbucks window. We read for you everything from that Seattle Department of Transportation warning about what they were expecting that day. Instead, it just seemed like a whole bunch of people who were very happy to block traffic. Now, my issue with that is time is something when you steal it from somebody, you can never give it back. Could emergency vehicles still get through? I think the fact that the Seattle Police Department lets these guys shut down streets is an ongoing source of contention for me. But regarding this whole thing, we haven't seen any reports of actual vandalism or violence yet. But instead, I don't know what these guys are protesting. Also, if you trap somebody in traffic, do you think they're more inclined to support your cause? Young Zach from The Morning Show pulled a couple clips for us of what they were protesting yesterday. Free Nelson Mandela! Oh, we freed him already. These guys have no clue what they're actually protesting. All the things. We're protesting all the things, right? Yep, let's do that too while we're at it. Sure. Yes, very cohesive group. I saw that whichever group was advertising these things, all of them had different takes on what they were actually doing. Meanwhile, any of this going to make anybody's lives better? No. And nobody's paying attention to the things that are going to make people's lives worse. According to the Center Square, defendants charged with public drug use in Seattle could get their charges dismissed in 60 days in exchange for full compliance with diversion programs as part of a new alternative to prosecution. Under the drug prosecution alternative, eligible defendants are to be transferred from the city attorney's office to the Seattle Municipal Court Resource Center, where they will participate in a substance use assessment and complete a drug test. Defendants must also avoid committing any criminal violations for a 60-day period to have their cases dismissed. According to Seattle City Attorney Ann Davidson's office, the program is meant to free up court resources by resolving open drug cases within 2 months and increase the number of participants fully participating in drug treatment services. The number of public drug cases in Seattle spiked in the first quarter of 2024, according to the office, and is continuing to average 25 to 35 cases a month. So I have a question. In fact, I'm going to reach out to the Seattle City Attorney on a whole host of issues this weekend. But my first question is, why do you think this is going to work this time? Who's monitoring it? We have done these diversion programs before, and they don't work, which is why we have prolific offenders, because they keep saying, oh, we're going to send you this diversion program, and then there's no diversion program. Look, I'm one of the people who says, yes, of course you need to get addicts into treatment to get them off of drugs. But if you keep diverting them and diverting them and diverting them and nobody's making sure they actually go, then we're just on the merry-go-round again. Why do you think it's going to work this time? What has changed? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing time and time again, expecting different results. And I'm pretty disappointed in Ann Davidson because she's supposed to be the public safety person. She ran on public safety. She beat that lunatic Antifa person, and I understand that Ann Davidson is running for re-election. But don't you think that making these people actually go to treatment, which I see no way how they're actually making them do that, and sometimes when you send them to jail, that's when they actually sober up. I'm just kind of wondering why you think it's going to work this time. Let's not forget, Ann Davidson, she's also the one trying to stop ICE from doing its job and pushing the sanctuary city stuff. You don't think you're going to stop crime by removing illegal immigrants who are dealing drugs to the very people you're trying to get treatment for. If there are less drugs coming in and less drug dealers, you have less people going to treatment. Do you think maybe these things are connected? I'm kind of disappointed in Ann because too much of this stuff is clear. She's trying to get the Democrat vote here again in Seattle. And I know that when I ran from office and I stopped being who I really am, that's when I started losing support. I'm concerned about her getting reelected again because a lot of people like me are going to say, well, what's the difference if you're going this route or going the other route? That's a real concern here in Seattle. I have to look into who her competition is. Let's see if we have any psychopaths like last time. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, good news on the economy, and the left may be missing their chance to hit Trump for what it's been up until now. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Do you remember the jobs reports from the Biden administration? They were always the same thing. One, they were overestimated, and they were constantly revising them downwards when nobody was paying attention. And we covered that in detail, in depth, because what would happen? The jobs increases or job decreases were the last thing that were missing in declaring a recession. And the left and the media really didn't want to declare a recession, so they kept holding on with the tips of their fingertips, holding on with their fingernails to, oh, look, the jobs keep going up. Never mind the fact that it was a lot of government hiring, which doesn't really count. So what's the jobs reports doing now that Donald Trump's firing everybody from the government, that Doge is firing everybody from the government? I thought we'd have job number problems, and then the left would run to declare a recession, except one little problem. I picked one of our mainstream media outlets to report on this, so you wouldn't think I was just doing, right-wing bias.
Non-farm payrolls, a greater 177,000. We're expecting, as Joe pointed out, 133,000. 177,000 would be the second best of the year outside of what's in the rearview mirror.
So that was CNBC. Definitely not my little black book of the mainstream media conspiracy. Now, here's something else that's interesting about that. You know what that means? A lot of these people who are taking these buyouts, like the thousands of employees from the IRS and other agencies, they're also looking for jobs. Who wouldn't, right? And here's something else. Starbucks had all those layoffs, and Microsoft had all the layoffs, and Boeing had layoffs. Everybody's having layoffs. But at the same time, there are other jobs to be had because so many companies were so understaffed for so long. This is actually really, really, really good news. Here's Stephen Moore over on Fox Business with a little bit more analysis.
436,000 increase in the number of people who are employed. So this is an amazing report. The number of people, the labor force participation rate rose. So this is a really strong number. I wanted to mention one other quick thing. About 2 weeks ago, every headline, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, was, the stock market is crashing. And since then, the market has been up, like 2,800 points.
Yeah, well, you don't see that
by the way, I don't see headlines about that.
That was the point, that Scott Bessent made. Yeah, Scott Bessent made the same point yesterday. That,
exactly, he made that point.
Exactly. Where are all the doom and gloom headlines about the economy? I remember them saying, the stock market's going down. We're going to be in a recession. We're going to be in a depression. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. We're all going to die, right? Here's something else. When companies say they're moving back to the U.S., that means they have the money to spend to hire people. Here, I'll give you a little story. This was before I was in the radio world. I think this was during COVID at some point. But I remember I was in between gigs because Inslee had shut down my companies and I was looking to pivot into something else. And I remember Israel put out an ad for who wants to be the guy who's running Tesla in Israel. Now, Israel gas is very, very expensive, and people were looking for electric cars, and everybody likes the Teslas. I think I heard that job posting got 50,000 applications. 50,000. That's a lot of Jews looking to move to Israel. So 50,000 job applications. I wonder how many of them were qualified. But because they said, hey, if Tesla's expanding in Israel, I can go live in Israel. It'll be great. It'll be fantastic. So the same thing's happening here. When these companies say, hey, we're coming back to the U.S. or we're moving our production to the U.S., they need people to work on the assembly lines. They need people to do the mechanic work. They need people in the dealerships. They need people to do the repairs. They need people to process the warranties. They need all this stuff. That's why I'm so glad I got my friends over at Renton, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. They handle this stuff all the time for fleets also, including trucks. You should check them out. I wish I had them when I had a whole bunch of trucks doing delivery. But right now we're seeing the automaker stocks are going up as well. Here's more from Fox Business.
What's interesting, the numbers, by the way, were very, I was a little surprised to see how strong they were, but this is very encouraging because we're already seeing many of the companies dependent upon foreign suppliers already reshoring some of their jobs. In fact, I talked just recently to a couple of entrepreneurs who are getting off their China dependency. They are going to other Southeast Asia companies for their supplies, and they're starting to look at domestic manufacturers. So they're putting orders in already for the third and fourth quarter for this. So
exactly. And why do you think China is now announcing that they're willing to talk tariffs with Trump? because they're starting to feel the pinch of not having American consumers. Look, we buy things that the rest of the world doesn't. The rest of the world cannot figure out, most cases, why grown men will buy the stuff that me and Mike buy. Right? They can't figure that out. These Americans, look how much money they got to spend. They spend it on action figures and Legos and parts for their car that they don't need. We have these little tiny cars in Europe, right? What are you buying these giant mufflers for? What are you doing? They can't understand that. But they were more than happy to sell it to us, and now they're not able to sell the stuff anymore because we're not buying them. It's really, really fascinating. Now, here's something else. Apparently, car sales are going up. Now, this one, let's take an objective lens to this. When you hear all the tariffs are going into place, you're thinking, I want to buy this thing now before it gets more expensive. But at the same time, this is good for the economy. Listen to more from Fox Business.
I was shocked to find out that for the month of April, the sales pace for light motor vehicles in the United States was in excess of 17.5 million units annualized. That's a second straight month that we've had a number that high. Not that long ago, and I would say earlier this year and last year, the sales pace was about 16 million units. That's incredible.
I actually think that's because of the tariffs, where people said, I'm worried if I don't buy a car now, it's going to be more expensive later. I actually think that's what that is, but still, it's the tariffs having an effect. What do you think? Are you seeing a net positive, a net negative on the tariffs? Because I know this is a very controversial issue for a lot of people in our audience. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, Jussie Smollett is back in the news, and now he might be getting a settlement for faking a hate crime? Oh, Chicago. Never change. I'm kidding. Please do. We'll have all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. The city of Chicago is now looking to do a settlement with Jussie Smollett. Wait, Jussie Smollett? This guy's back in the news?
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Now, you remember what happened with this guy? We're going back to 2021. He was convicted of staging a hate crime hoax against himself. And the city of Chicago is now reaching a settlement 6 years later after the city sued the former Empire actor, accusing him of filing a false police report. According to NBC, the suit was filed in April of 2019, 3 months after Smollett claimed that he had been the victim of a homophobic and racist attack in a Chicago neighborhood. The city accused him of filing a false police report, saying that Smollett knew his attackers. The suit sought $130,000 in expenses that had been spent on the police investigation in the case. Smollett had filed a countersuit claiming he had not orchestrated the attack and denied that he had filed a false police report. Now, the two parties said on Monday that they had reached a settlement but need more time to finalize documentation. A hearing is scheduled for the end of the month. So we don't know who's paying who in this case yet because they're both suing each other. What's your money on? I'm going to guess that city of Chicago is going to end up paying him something, or it's going to be a wash. Those are my two guesses. Do you really think that he's going to end up paying the city of Chicago, as woke as they are, for the hundreds of thousands of dollars he wasted? Actually, it's more than $130,000. That was just the investigation. How about the trial itself and how long that took and all the resources? Do you remember what happened with Jussie Smollett? Remember what he did? This was the crime that he faked. So this guy hired two of his bodyguard types, stunt double types from the TV show he was working on, two guys he knew in the industry, to beat the hell out of him so he could run around and claim that he got beat up by two MAGA guys. Now, immediately, this story had challenges. One, I know Empire was a big deal, but he's still not a big enough name for people to know that he's going to be at a random hotel in the middle of the night. Two, it was a frozen tundra in Chicago. It was the deep winter. And you think they're waiting there for you? Now, he said they were wearing MAGA hats, and immediately you're going to call BS on the story. Why? Anybody who's been to the windy city of Chicago in the winter knows you're not wearing a baseball hat in the winter in Chicago. You are covering your ears with earmuffs, woolen hats, toques, whatever you want to call them. You're wearing those things because of how cold it is. And then he said they had a noose ready to go and pour bleach on him. So let me make sure I got this right. You've got these two guys waiting in the frozen tundra of Chicago in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the night, assuming he's going to go to Subway to get a sandwich in the middle of the night. You're at a hotel. Why wouldn't you get room service? Or why didn't you go down to the little thing in the lobby where they have all the snacks? That's what I do when I did that in D.C. That's literally all I ate the first 24 hours I was there were those little snacks and a Diet Coke. That's all I went and had while I was there. I was trying to be healthy because I'm having the snacks, trying to offset the snacks. So, come on. So much of this stuff didn't make any sense. And then remember when he got sentenced, once it was proven, it was, I'm not suicidal. I'm not suicidal. You're not Jeffrey Epstein, man, okay? You're not in that case. This whole case made no sense whatsoever. I hope he ends up paying through the nose. Let's remember also, this guy basically got Empire canceled. The PR was so bad from all of this. What was he looking to do? Just get a new contract out of the deal? Is that what it was? They were going to kill off his character or he was going to leave the show? I think that's what it was, right, Mike?
Yeah, no, he wanted a more prominent role on the show.
Mm-hmm. So you think that by faking a hate crime, you get a more prominent role on the show. Tell you what, Mike, that's what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to walk into the middle of Seward Park, all of a sudden pay some people to stage a hate crime so that way I can get my contract extended around here. That makes sense, right?
Well, if you're going to do that kind of stunt, you may as well do it at the Puyallup RV show where we're going to be at this weekend.
We are not faking hate crimes at the Puyallup RV show, but yes, you should come out and see us at the Puyallup RV show. Mike is going to be there on Saturday. I am am going to be there on Sunday with Phil. Is young Zach coming, Mike? Is he coming out also?
Negative.
Okay, so you're there on Saturday. Me and Phil are out there on Sunday. I will be there from 10 to 12:30 on Sunday if you want to come see me. Mike, what time are you going to be there on Saturday?
I'll probably get there around noon 30-ish.
Noon 30-ish.
Yeah, Mr. KVI will probably be there around that time. There'll probably be some overlap there. Not really advertising that because he's shy. He doesn't want me to but yeah, if you want to come visit Mr. KVI, you can visit us there at the fairgrounds as well. Parking is free in the blue lot. And yeah, it should be fun. I haven't done the Puyallup RV show, but from what I understand of the show of this type, it's a good one. We were really excited to be partners on this one.
I'm very excited to see all the off-roading stuff that usually goes along with an RV show. I want to see all the little buggies and things like that. I like that kind of stuff. I want to check it out. And after all, we did get rid of our dune buggy, so maybe it's time to get a new one. Now that the kids are leaving the house, you can get something that's just for me, right? Right? Yes? Well,
yeah,
check it out.
Little blue dune buggy. Yeah,
exactly.
Sounds great.
We'll see what's there. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, Washington counties are freaking out that they might lose funding for transit. How about you guys just try enforcing federal law? Then you won't lose the funding for the transit that nobody's actually riding. We'll discuss when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 4:45 today, Zach from The Morning Show will be joining us. Put a smile on your face for Fake News Friday heading into the weekend. But before we get to any of that, my friends, there's a story from the Daily Wire that's not about Washington, but now it's about cutting grants, and transit agencies in Washington are freaking out about it. So according to the Daily Wire, the Department of Transportation is terminating $54 million worth of recently discovered woke university grants, arguing that the grants advance radical agendas that ran counter to the department's mission. 7 schools received grants, which Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told the Daily Wire were advancing a radical DEI and green agenda that is wasteful and counter to the Trump administration's priorities. University of California, Davis's National Center for Sustainable Transportation was receiving $12 million for accelerating equitable decarbonization research, according to the department. That's not actually anything with decarbonization. It just says, oh, it's racist because these people live here and those people live there. City College of New York's Center for Social and Economic Mobility for People and Communities Through Transportation. You guys need a shorter name. You guys are like the Strategic Homeland Intervention. What was SHIELD? I don't even remember what SHIELD was, but it was long. Through Transportation was receiving about $9 million for research into equitable transportation for the disadvantaged workforce. The previous administration turned the Department of Transportation into the Department of Woke, Duffy told the Daily Wire. I focus the department on what matters: safety, making travel great again, and building big, beautiful infrastructure projects. Now, this is something that Sound Transit could learn, by the way. Maybe if you guys weren't spending all the money on the DEI garbage, then you know what? Maybe you might be more successful having trains run on time. Maybe then you might come in on budget from time to time. Just a thought. The department's discovery is yet another instance of massive amounts of American taxpayer dollars going to the ideological pet projects of the past administration. In the Transportation Department's case, officials looked under the hood and were horrified to find that many of the grants weren't even aligned with transportation at all. Duffy said the American people have zero interest in millions of their tax dollars funding research on the intersection of gender nonconforming people and infrastructure inequality, or whether road improvement projects are racist. You remember Pete Buttigieg wanted to make sure roads weren't racist anymore. It's time to inject a dose of reality back into our higher education system, and that starts with ending these wasteful and divisive grants. Other recipients of the grants have now been terminated, including the University of Southern California Pacific Southwest Region, New York University, San Jose State University, University of New Orleans, and Johns Hopkins University. So, the University of Southern California's Pacific Southwest Region University Transportation Center received about $9 million for research on how the transportation system creates and perpetuates inequities. Isn't the transportation system supposed to make sure everybody equal? I remember that Batman Begins movie. And you have Thomas Wayne telling a young Bruce Wayne, while Thomas Wayne is still alive before he dies, talking about how they build cheap transit for everybody with that subway system that's looking kind of rough later when Ra's al Ghul is fighting Batman on that thing. So this is the kind of nonsense they are teaching. Here's another one. Here's $6 million they gave out for research into e-bikes to low-income travelers in transit deserts. Transit deserts. Yes. In rural areas, the e-bikes are going to help them get to transit, right? Yes, hundreds of miles to get to transit. Under former grants, San Jose University's Mineta Consortium for Emerging Efficient and Safe Transportation was also receiving about $6 million for research into intermodal inequities, particularly how improvements to auto travel can benefit higher income, often white drivers, while depressing transit ridership potential and depriving it of revenues necessary to provide comprehensive services to lower income, often BIPOC people, and research into using crowdsourcing and collaborative planning to address safety concerns of women and gender nonconforming people using public transportation. Mike, did any of that make any sense to you? I consider myself an educated person. I don't know what any of that said. Right. Baby Yoda doesn't get it either, and he's got a robot with him. Exactly. What are they talking about? There's a lot of big words in that. University of New Orleans Center for transit-oriented communities were receiving $6 million for equitable transit-oriented communities, and how neighborhood stabilization efforts support environmental justice. What? Johns Hopkins University Center for Smart Transportation was receiving $6 million for climate change-focused research on hyperlocal pollution exposure inequities in New York City, promoting EV usage for low-income gig workers, long-distance ride-sharing, and gentrification. Guys, you're not going to get the EV chargers without the gentrification. Sorry, hate to break it to you. So, this is the kind of stuff we were wasting money on. Now, it doesn't specifically call out our transit agencies, given that this is all transportation stuff. But today, I got a press release from the King County executive. So here's what they say. A coalition of 8 local governments today filed a lawsuit in federal court in Seattle challenging the Trump administration's unlawful action that imposes new conditions on previously awarded grants without congressional approval. They said that, including King County, these 8 local governments filed the lawsuit in U.S. District Court for Western District of Washington against the Trump administration's Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration. The lawsuit challenges the Trump administration's additional unlawful conditions in order to receive federal funding for public transit and homelessness assistance, putting at risk critical services for residents. Do you guys remember my interview with HUD Secretary Scott Turner on Monday? Do you remember what it was all about? It was all about the fact that he was going to start looking into how much federal money they were getting for quote-unquote homelessness here in Washington, which isn't actually being used for that. And it looks like they are actually doing it. So I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. They call the funding stipulations added by the heads of federal agencies unconstitutional and overreach by the executive branch, which does not have the authority to change federal grant conditions without Congress's explicit approval. Despite this, the Trump administration has added several unlawful conditions to the HUD Continuum of Care grant and the FTA Master Agreement, which cover grants King County was awarded to provide housing support and transit operations for its residents. Now, King County Executive Shannon Braddock has said, I have a duty to fully enforce the law and protect these important services for our residents. Okay, remember that quote for a second. Fully enforce the law. That's why we are joining other jurisdictions from around the country to ensure the administration can't disregard congressionally approved processes and bully local governments to comply with their political agenda at the expense of being able to deliver critical services. You mean like Chris Rakedal's doing to the La Center School District? All right. Apart from violating federal law, the new requirements from the administration would force King County and other local governments to make legal promises that conflict with local laws and values. Whose values? Your values or mine? Is it law or is it values? And make it difficult to serve our residents. Are you ready for what these conditions are? Here we go. You told me they conflict with law and values. These conditions include ones that are related to immigration status, health care, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Now I see what this is all about. You don't want ICE involved. You don't want to work with federal authorities in actually making sure we deport illegal immigrant criminals. You want them riding your transit. Is that what it is? That's what it sounds like to me. Healthcare. What is healthcare code for? Oh, you want to keep transing the kids. That's what it is, right? The healthcare. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you want to keep pushing forward with discriminatory practices that discriminate based on the color of a kid's skin, what race they are, what ethnicity they are, what religion they are. So basically what you're saying is you want to violate federal immigration law, you want to violate civil rights protections, and you want to trans the kids. Do I have that all right? That's right. So whose laws and whose values are you pushing with here? They said the lawsuit filed today also resists efforts by the Trump administration to coerce local governments into accepting unlawful grant conditions. For example, if King County agreed to the administration's demands to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. Any violation of federal terms could make the county liable to the federal government for 3 times the amount of the grant. Whoa, 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 whoa. Are you saying you're going to get sued or fined for violating civil rights by pushing this DEI garbage? You deserve to be. And then they say further endangering critical services for county residents. You guys are the ones who are violating federal law. You don't want to be in trouble. Don't violate federal law. Now, Pierce and Snohomish County are part of this. They're also together with San Francisco, Santa Clara County, New York City, Boston, and Columbus. They also filed a temporary restraining order on May 5th that, if granted, would block HUD and the FTA from imposing or enforcing the unauthorized grant conditions and anticipate a court ruling by the end of the week. So we know what's going to happen, right? Some local lefty Seattle district judge will say, you can't do this. And then it goes to the appeals court. And then it goes to the appeals court. And eventually it winds up where? At the Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, you're saying you want to continue being a bunch of racist scumbags. You want to continue discriminating against people. You want to keep allowing illegal immigrant criminals like MS-13 gang members, Tren de Aragua gang members. Oh, didn't we just have an issue with 2 Tren de Aragua gang members who took a woman captive, drilled through her hand, shot her, and dumped her body on the side of the road? Why? Because they wanted her money. Didn't we just have that? So I'm just making sure. You guys are looking out for the Tren de Aragua gang members. You want them on transit. Aren't you guys having safety issues on transit? Don't you guys have an issue where every surface of those trains are covered with meth and fentanyl and the air samples and everything else? But you guys want to keep that going. So when you're talking about values, I think the people who ride your train, I think their values are to come home alive. That's just a guess. Get to work alive. So then whose values are we conflicting with when you want to get rid of the gang members? When you want to stop discriminating? Oh, it seems like the Democrat Party has gone back to its racist roots. Let's discriminate against everybody. Now, it's not just the right that's mad about transit around here. It's also the left. Are you ready for this one? This is so delicious. This comes from KUOW. Enjoy it while you can, guys. Not sure how much longer you have funding for because they are an NPR affiliate. Internal City of Seattle communications leaked to KUOW show that officials plan to withhold some environmental concerns from the public and federal regulators regarding Sound Transit's planned West Seattle Link light rail extension. Wait, isn't this a thing that's billions of dollars in the hole already and they haven't even laid any track? So wait a minute. Hang on. I want to make sure I got this. The left is mad. There are environmental concerns about the choo-choo trains that are supposed to be good for the environment and that officials who claim to be all about the environment were covering it up. Is that an accurate summary? Just want to make sure I got this right. Okay, we're going to keep reading from KUOW. Most definitely not an outlet in my little black book of the right-wing media conspiracy. The records from last fall detail critical issues that the city departments found Sound Transit failed to properly address in the final environmental impact statement it filed for federal approval of the project. In a 19-page draft response letter that KUOW reviewed, city officials wrote that Sound Transit still needed to lay out plans to restore salmon spawning habitat in Longfellow Creek that would be damaged by the light rail construction. Oh, you guys have created your own monster here. How can we build the train if we're going to kill the fishies? You know what this means? Dow Constantine, when he was board chair of Sound Transit, and all his little buddies go, you mean there's a fish in the way of our choo-choo train? Kill the fish! Kill all the fish. They'll come back eventually, right? Right? Oh, this is more delicious than salmon. Here we go. In a section on environmental justice, the city criticized Sound Transit as having failed to thoroughly assess long-term impacts of displacement and relocation that could irrevocably harm people from marginalized communities without an adequate plan for compensation. Whoa, wait. I thought you guys said you were the anti-racist ones. I thought you guys said that you were the ones who wanted to make sure that DEI was being carried out. Hey, Trump administration, Sound Transit's discriminating against people. KUOW's the one reporting it. Oh, this is amazing. This is too good. Oh, let's see what else is here. Rather than send this response in a public letter to regulators as usual, internal city communication shows the Department of Transportation officials last September unveiled a different two-pronged strategy in a presentation to other city departments. The city's public response to federal regulators would be short, supportive, and mention only a few concerns. The slide deck presentation explained, "You intentionally covered up that you're going to kill the fishies?" Then separately, the city would later send a non-public letter to Sound Transit detailing outstanding critical issues with the West Seattle Link extension. A bullet point on one slide. Called this plan good for city's relationship with Sound Transit. Okay, so what you're saying is we have some concerns. We'll discuss them later. And behind closed doors, guys, you're going to kill our fishies, and we have to be environmentally friendly around here. What are you doing? But thank you, KUOW. Thank you. I give you guys a hard time, but when you hit a home run, you hit a home run. Here you are taking the left to task. Oh, this is amazing. Political pressure to start construction. Oh, wait. Hang on one second here. Sound Transit has expressed a strong preference that the city not submit a public letter challenging or commenting on the federal environmental impact statement. City and Sound Transit have made significant progress on many outstanding issues and want to keep positive momentum as we work to build a stronger interagency partnership. So you guys were doing this behind closed doors. You didn't want anybody to know that this was happening. Concealing stuff from the public? This is great. Political pressure to start construction on the West Seattle line has mounted after 2 years of delays and a massive jump in the projected price for the project from $2.3 billion when voters approved it to as much as $7.1 billion. Construction is now projected to begin in 2027, with the service coming to the line in 2032. 2032. That is 7 years from now. And going by Sound Transit's usual schedule, so let's see, they're usually 3 to 4 years over. So 7 years, I'm 44 right now. I'll be 51, add a few more. Do you think Sound Transit will finish the West Seattle line before I'm 55? Do you think that would actually happen? Right, exactly. Before I'm 55 years old. Or better yet, what's the shorter amount of time? How much longer I have my hair for, or when they actually finish this thing? One or the other. It's not looking good. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from our friend Transit Joe. Transit Joe, does this bother you as much as it bothers me?
No, I think we should just build the rail already. We voted for it. We already had the EIS. Let's go.
All right, let's go. Kill the fishies. Kill the fishies, right, Joe?
Well, you know what? I'm getting sick and tired of the process getting in the way of progress, man. A few fishies dead is well worth it. But I got some news I got to break.
Wait, hang on. Before you break the news, I'll let you break the news, Joe. I will let you do that, okay? But just I want to say you sound a little bit more like you're on my side here, Joe, than the other side, right?
Yeah, and I'm all for. We voted for Sound Transit free. We should get the project quickly.
Okay, I find this very entertaining, Joe. I find this very, very entertaining. What's your breaking news today?
Today we learned that Senator Marco Willius, the obese gay senator in Senate Bill 5801, stuck in a Part X. What is Part X? It's a plot to have Everett Transit merge with Community Transit, and that will raise by one single public meeting without a vote of the people the sales tax rate for transit in the city limits of Everett from 0.6% to 1.2%. One public meeting. Majority of both Everett Council and Community Transit boards.
Have they had the meeting yet? Have they had the meeting yet? They already had it?
No, they have to get it legally authorized. And Governor Ferguson can veto this, and I hope he does, because as I've told members of the media, this is going to risk a backlash election.
Well, I think what it's going to do is that if people keep getting taxed, and Senator Marco Willius has never met a tax he didn't like. This is one of the guys behind the Climate Commitment Act. He's never met a tax he didn't like. So if people keep getting taxed, at some point they're going to say enough, right?
Yes, and people should be concerned about the ability to pass school levies. People should be concerned about the kind of backlash that could be in store here. We just had a backlash election over the Climate Commitment Act because Marco Willius didn't want to put it to a vote.
Can you do me a favor, Joe? Can you send me an article or a link or paperwork on any of this? I would love to do a deeper dive over the weekend.
Yeah, I'll send you what I've been sending out around. But I've let it be known I'm a huge supporter of transit. I support the idea of merging the two agencies, but we need a public vote.
But
and
also,
that's my message.
wait a second, even if you merge the two of them, shouldn't it have less costs, not more costs? So why, if you merge the two of them, is it going to be more expensive for Everett residents?
Because the sales tax rate will have to go up to be fair, and it will provide more service to people, which is what's needed. But, Ari, this should have a public vote, and there should be a clear plan to implement this, because one of the things community transit loves to do is they love to draw corridors and deny people neighborhood services connections. So you have to walk farther to get to a bus, and it's another issue. Another issue is there's concern about the pensions for the employees that work at Everett Transit. And there's also governance issues, like how much of a voice is Everett going to have over a countywide transit agency? These are all things that have not been worked out yet.
So it's fascinating to me that they're trying to do this they're trying to do it when's the meeting again? When did you say the meeting is? I assume it's sometime during the summer, right?
No meeting. It may be over the summer, but Governor Ferguson has to approve it. I sent you what I sent to Mario Watmore and a few others. I did send it to you.
I'll check it out. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it over the weekend, Joe, because I want to be educated in this, because this is so much fun. Meaning people's sales tax is going to go up, and they're not going to have any idea, because once again, they're trying to do these things in the dark of night. Joe, appreciate the tip. Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, POTUS gave an amazing graduation speech at the University of Alabama. We'll give you all details when we come back and have that awesome audio for you. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Isn't it a little early for graduation season? Isn't graduation usually the end of May, beginning of June, even for colleges? I was a little surprised when I saw President Trump speaking at the University of Alabama for their graduation last night. Maybe they're on a different schedule. I don't know. It just seems a little early for me. I remember this time last year we were still dealing with the encampment, the Gaza encampment over at University of Washington. They had to get it cleaned out for June something before graduation. I guess different states are on slightly different schedules. Okay. But actually, President Trump had some really great inspirational stuff. Yeah, he spoke about politics, and he even made a crack about, hey, maybe you want to hear something about education and something that's not about politics. But he had some really, really good lines last night. Give a listen.
To change the world, you have to have the courage to be an outsider. In other words, you have to take certain risks and do things a little bit differently. Otherwise, if that weren't the case, everybody would be successful. It doesn't work that way. Progress never comes from those satisfied with the failures of a broken system. It comes from those who want to fix the broken system. And you'll make the bigger money, you'll make the more success by acting that way. The other way may be more secure, but if you want to go to the top, you're just never going to do it unless you break the system. Change is never easy, and the closer you get to success, the more ferociously those with a vested interest in the past will resist you. They want to resist. So I just say, trust me on that, because I know you really do. You have to break the system a little bit and follow your own instincts. But if your vision is right, nothing will hold you down.
He's 100% right. Some of the most successful people we know in American history are the ones who broke a system. What, you mean we don't need to ride horses anymore wherever we're going in transportation? You can come up with something mechanical to do that? The computer, the processor. I mean, all this stuff that was invented by people who said, what can I do to fix the problems we have? How can I fix the system? How can I change things? Really good advice. And if you have a good enough invention, guess what? People are going to buy it, and it will become the standard. He had other things. He added other pearls of wisdom.
But in America, we reject that idea that anyone is born a victim. Our heroes are the ones who take charge of their own destiny, make their own luck, and determine their own fate despite the odds, despite all odds. That's what happens. They're given a little chance in many cases, very little chance of success, and they become the most successful people in the world. Whether you were born rich or poor, black or white, male or female in America, anyone can be a winner, and our whole country will be cheering you on, and I'll be at the front of the line cheering you on, especially because you come from this incredible university.
You know something that bothers me? And I kind of stopped watching directors' commentaries of movies. Every single great movie was not supposed to get made. Every single one has a story of it wasn't supposed to get made. So I'm kind of wondering, are these studio heads idiots, or is everybody lying? I kind of wonder about that. Or how much garbage do they make that the good movies manage to slip through? But he is 100% right. Every great success story starts with something that wasn't supposed to happen. Somebody who broke the mold. Also, President Trump was giving words of encouragement to athletes who are losing out on scholarships because of liberal psychosis.
And as long as I'm president, we will always protect women's sports. Men will not play in women's sports. No way.
Do you hear that roar from the crowd? Do you hear that? Those are college kids. We all assume every single college is woke. And you know what? Even the more conservative-leaning colleges have their woke nonsense. But it doesn't mean the population that's going there is.
They say that's an 80-20 issue. No, it's a 97-3 issue, I think. No, men will not be playing in women's sports. I said that, and I classified it with a very powerful executive order. As you know, it's done.
Exactly. By the way, I can't wait for a Supreme Court ruling on this thing when it finally comes down. I can't wait to read that thing. Also, Donald Trump was saying here, when you have all these things, when all these things are working with you, all these things are working against you, when all these things are working against you and people are telling you things are racist that aren't, don't listen to them. Be the person who bucks the system.
It helps when you know that borders are not racist, speech is not violence, America is good, terrorists are bad, Men can never become women. Police are not criminals, and criminals are not victims.
Can we go back in time 20 years? Can you imagine we'd have to be having arguments on all of that? Just go back in time 20 years. Can you imagine saying to yourself 20 years ago, yeah, we're going to have a fight about men who want to be girls, and people are actually going to say, yes, they are girls. And you'd be like, what are you talking? How much have you had to drink? Sit down, crazy. That is how out of control this perception is, and that's why it's an 80-20 issue, just as the president said. Because so many people this most recent election said we've had enough of crazy time. Can we get back to a little bit of normal? Just a little bit of normal. And speaking of a little bit of normal, when we come back, religion is back in government. Religion was back at the White House. A National Day of Faith out there. And one of the people from the Trump administration is going to be joining us to discuss it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Remember, if you missed any part of the show, you can always get the podcast over at whatever your preferred podcast platform is. It seems like this White House is more faith-oriented. It seems like religion is something that's kind of been missing from our national conversation for quite some time, and it seems like this White House is doing everything it possibly can to have that conversation again, including having events at the White House. Joining us now on the KVI studio line to discuss the National Day of Prayer events going on at the White House Faith Director Jenny Korn. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Ari, and hello to all of your listeners, and hope they're having a great week and a great week of National Day of Prayer.
This is why I love talking to religious people. They're always so friendly. So tell us about
we have the joy from God.
Tell us about what's going on at the White House today.
Absolutely. So we had the National Day of Prayer celebrated with 200 faith leaders of diverse backgrounds, many denominations. President Trump welcomed them into his home and is so gracious. And he had 5 different prayers. We had Catholic, we had Jewish, we had an imam, we had just amazing prayers, very powerful. And the greatest thing was, the president was going to only have, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of remarks. Everybody was supposed to just do 2-minute prayers, and it turned into a whole house of worship service. I mean, it was beautiful. And so President invited 50 of the faith leaders to come onto the stage with him, and every person, and we couldn't get mad at them, went instead of the 2 minutes, they went 5 minutes for prayer. But the president was up there with us the entire time, praying and enjoying it, and then signed the Commission on Religious Liberty, and it was just an amazing day. As I stood there on the stage, I almost started tearing up because I was like, wow, President Trump has invited all of us. We're singing Amazing Grace, and it's just a gorgeous day. It was amazing. And you're right. People of faith and faith is welcome back at the highest levels of government.
You know, I'm having a bit of FOMO. I was at the White House earlier this week for Media Row, and I didn't know this was going on. Otherwise, I might have stuck around a few days to hang out with some people.
Well, don't worry. We'll have more of these events, and you'll be invited.
Wonderful. That would be wonderful. That and, if the Mets win the World Series, because I'm praying really, really hard for that. I want to come back if they ever get to go to the White House. So
you are a praying man.
Oh, I am definitely a very, very religious man. I will say something nice about when I was at the White House was actually I'm wearing my pin for the hostages in Israel. And the amount of people who just said, I'm praying for the hostages. It's just a whole different mentality over at this White House. What do you think is behind this huge shift? Because while prayer was present in the last Trump administration, it wasn't this prevalent. What do you think is the change behind this?
Right. I think there's three things at play here. One, the Biden administration so diminished faith, so discriminated against people of faith, and made people kind of fear being religious or being faithful. And so now you have a president who's come into office who is saying, I welcome religion, I welcome faith. And so it's just a 180, and people, it's like a sigh of relief. Obviously, the president on July 13th of last year came within a millimeter of being killed when that bullet grazed his ear. And he says publicly and privately how he truly believed that God saved his life in order to bring America back to the golden age. And it's just so important to us to make sure that we're upholding this, because if you see the federal level, the state level, even at the local level, you see governments trying to take away the rights of people of faith.
Yeah, I see it all the time. We live out here in Washington, which is the least churched state in the entire union. We're talking with White House Faith Director Jenny Korn. And just to play devil's advocate for a second, because we are the most pro-devil show on the radio, and I know that's blasphemous, but just a lot of people would say, hey, we have this whole separation of church and state. And actually, I was having this discussion with my son last night. I said, son, that's not what it's about. It's you can't have an established religion. You can be welcoming to all religions, and that sounds exactly like what you guys are doing. What would you say to critics who say there's too much religion in government?
I would say you're wrong, not you, the critics. And I'm so glad that you asked that question, because, people come to me, separation of church and state. And I've seen so many pastors in fear because someone approaches them with that. Yes, what that means, separation of church and state, means that the government can't dictate to you what religion you can be. Like back in England, the Church of England. That's why people came to America, to have religious freedom. Remember, this country was founded on God. So we're not establishing religion. We are not the pastor of the White House. We are not the church of the White House. We are the White House Faith Office, and we are the liaisons to make sure that people of faith across the country have a voice in the policy that affects them directly.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my bucket list items is to get invited to the White House Hanukkah party. So if you could help me make that happen, I'd be thrilled.
All right, let's see what we can work on, Ari. Have me back on. Let's talk about it as we get closer.
Anytime. You have been such a delight. White House Faith Director Jenny Korn, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for prioritizing religion in our country that was built on Judeo-Christian values. Really do appreciate it.
Amazing, and thank you for talking about it, and just let everybody know that there's a welcome mat at the White House for people of faith, and we are going to we take that mantle very seriously, and we're honored to be in this position. So God bless you and all your listeners.
God bless you as well. Such a refreshing change from the last administration. Thank you so much for joining us today. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Lame. Totally lame.
Lame. See, Ari, I'm sorry.
Oh, here we go.
I'm actually not sorry.
him up.
You can get away with this as like a recent transplant. You have been here for over half of your life at this point.
How long have you?
Almost.
Yes. How long have you lived here?
I have lived here for 21 beautiful years.
So I only
just barely. Okay,
I only
fine.
have 4 years on you living in this state.
They were formative years of your childhood. That's the difference.
I think he was dead.
So much.
Send a hate mail to the text line 206-421-5757. Tell Ari who JP patches. Show him a picture of the gosh darn Space Needle. Why don't you?
Man, Zach, you should have been here for Real Deal a couple weeks ago, where I'm like painstakingly trying to explain to Ari what Rainier beer is and why it's important to those of us here.
I knew what the beer was.
Vitamin R.
That's the best part of that movie, by the way. There's an entire segment where they go over the making of that commercial.
Oh, that's great.
It's terrific. Go out, check out Rainier: A Beer Odyssey. It's really, really very good. I'm going to email this joke to a half hour ago and say, like, so we live in a time where the JP Patches statue gets vandalized, and yet the Lennon statue remains unmolested.
Yes. Yay, Seattle. What else you got, Zach?
Well, let's do some fake news, I guess.
Finally, I got a chance to use my rim shot sound effect.
Yeah, that just got mean. I'm sorry. Not that sorry.
Like the realest Fun Time Friday ever. Good.
Okay. Well, let's go to the Babylon Bee for some fake news. After PBS defunded all Sesame Street characters, they've now been forced to move in with Oscar.
I like that. By the way, it just shows how effective leftist policies are. That dude's been homeless for like 50 years.
Yeah, see, what happened to Housing First? They gave him a can.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody walks past him and ignores him.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Forgotten members of our society.
Exactly.
Oscar the Grouch.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Also, this today's episode was brought to you by the letters M and S and the number 13.
That's brought to you by the Hard Time.
Yes.
Oh, man, you were taking it right off my list.
Dang it.
That's okay.
I didn't know if you were going to transition to it or if you were going to skip it.
That's all right.
I really
We
like
got
that
lots
one.
of stuff to cover.
Knuckles.
Mike, you sent me this one. Bill Belichick puts girlfriend in pack and play until football practice is over.
Did you see that meme going
she's
around?
a child.
Which I've been wondering. I don't think I've had the chance to make this joke yet. My name on the radio has long been Young Zach, right?
Yes.
She's younger than me.
Young gold digger. There is this great meme that's going around where it's her at the same age, or rather the same year. It was the year 2000 or something like that.
Yes,
It's a
the
picture of
year
her as a baby
2000.
and him as like in his 60s or something. It's not great. It's pretty awful.
None of it's great.
No.
None of it's
None
great.
of it's great.
And it's a borderline crime, and I hate the guy anyway, so what do I care?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right.
Also, you would think that guy would be able to buy a new ratty sweater every 25 years or so, but
one would think
he must be on the Leonardo DiCaprio program with in terms of his ratty sweaters.
I think he meant cycling out young women.
Yes,
He
also
does that too.
I was trying to be clever, and it's not a good look for me. it's not something I wear very well.
Oh, man. Well, I don't know. Here's
What
some
else
more
you
from the
got?
Babylon
Question
Bee
mark?
since, yeah, I liked it. Media evidence. Media says no evidence. Demon-horned man with Sith tattoos and a red lightsaber is a member of the Sith.
I like that one.
I thought
That's very good. I
thought you'd like that one. As I said earlier, global birth rates hit historic lows, but the Babylon Bee suggests that's because Elon Musk is busy with Doge.
Oh, you gotta give him that huck.
Oh, and Lars Larson brought this one to my attention this morning. Tim Walz volunteers to wear gorilla suit and wrestle 100 men. Which now opens up a second discussion here on the Fun Time Fake News Friday. Who wins? 100 men or one gorilla?
Or Tim Walz?
I was going to say or Tim Walz because
that's just a joke about the real.
He's an unarmed Tim Walz.
I saw that man try to use a shotgun, even armed. He's unarmed.
Not to be confused with Michael Waltz, who apparently is a different guy with a different dance.
He's armed with a group chat.
There you go.
Armed with a
There you
group
go.
chat.
There you go.
All
I
right,
go
Ari.
gorilla every time.
Gorilla every time
Every
for Mike.
time.
Every single time.
Yeah.
I've seen so many movies. The gorilla always wins until like some nice lady comes along and goes, "Chill out, gorilla."
And that's where I think we have a chance. If you can get the gorilla, to befriend the gorilla and convince it's not fighting.
Yeah.
You can get you can
Hey,
get
big
100
guy,
guys.
The sun's getting real
Yeah,
low.
yeah. I take 100 men with one banana.
There you go.
But if that gorilla knows it's fighting, no chance. I want to pose another one. What if Phil, myself, Ari, Mike, if all of us took on Bubbles the chimpanzee, who's still alive, by the way.
Yes.
Michael Jackson's chimpanzee, Bubbles, still alive.
So I hear that the chimpanzee got very violent later in life, and it was in a cage, and it would just stay there, and Michael Jackson would tell people to stay away from the monkey.
Stay away from Bubbles.
Yeah, stay away from my monkey.
But now he's super old. So if we have 4 grown men
And
against
Michael
one,
is super dead.
I'm going to tell you why I think we would lose. Here's
against
why
an
we would
elderly
lose.
chimpanzee.
Yes, I'm going to tell you why. We would be doing
Elder
what we're
chimp
doing
law.
right now. What you're doing in that booth, we'd all be laughing like
Yes.
we're fighting a chimpanzee.
I'll tell you what, we're the losers either way, because the headline either reads 4 grown men kill elderly chimpanzee, and that's not a good look. Or 4 grown men killed by elderly chimpanzee.
Slain by elderly chimp. Also, though, I saw that chimp crazy. I like my face. I
But
would
those
prefer
chimps were in their prime.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, dude, he'll just throw some poop, and I'll just start laughing.
Yeah,
and
there
that'll
you
be
go.
that. That's the end of that.
Well, we'll see what happens when I do it first.
Oh, you're just going to go on a solo mission. I see. All right.
If I'm not getting backup, I guess I'll have to.
What else you got, Zach?
Nothing.
Nothing? That's it?
No.
All right, on that note, we got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Bye.
Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniels Broiler gift card and 2 Adam passes to see Shadow Force. But before we get to any of that, we go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Tom and Randall. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, these guys that I dealt with were really smart. I'm a pretty intelligent guy. It was a scam involving, the first thing they said is, hey, you failed to show up to court today. And it involves Letitia James and her involvement in fraudulent.
Hang on a second. Tom, what kind of scam are we talking about? Like somebody called you and said you failed to show up to court today, give us money?
So it was a Lewis County sheriff that called up and said, Tom, you're supposed to be in court today. Why didn't you show up to court? I said, I never got a notice.
Wait. Was it somebody who claimed to be a Lewis County sheriff, or was it actually a Lewis County sheriff?
It was somebody that claimed to be a Lewis County sheriff.
Okay, yeah. Keep going. I'm listening.
This isn't one that I've ever heard before. And they were good at what they did. And I'm like, dude, I have not gotten any notice. I live here on a ranch. I don't got time to leave to go to court all the way to Hey, it's going to take me 3 hours to get there. He goes, well, we need to stay on the line with you from here on out. If we lose contact, if we don't get back in contact with you in 2 calls, then we send a Lewis County sheriff out to arrest you.
Oh, so this is the latest scam. So this is the kind of stuff that, for example, one time my grandma gets a call, and it was one of those, your grandma, I'm in jail. You got to bail me out of jail. Now, the way my grandma told me this story, she called me up. She goes, Ari, are you okay? I said, yeah, Grandma, I'm fine. Why? What's going on? She goes, I got a call from somebody who said, Grandma, I'm in jail. And I said, Ari? And he said, yeah, it's me, Grandma. Can you help me out? And I wasn't sure, and something didn't sound right, so I called you to double check. And I said, Grandma, you've got a whole bunch of grandchildren. Why was I the first one that popped into your mind? Like, okay, I know I may have had a more, shall I just say, adventurous youth than my siblings, for example. But the fact that Grandma thought it was the me calling from jail, yeah, that's a problem. But Tom, thank you for alerting us to this most recent scam.
No, this was big. Ari, this was way different.
Why?
This is guys that were saying that you were supposed to show up in court today. You didn't show up. You have to go in front of the judge to prove that you didn't sign for whatever it was that was your subpoena to show up in court.
Yeah, this is like the Social Security one they do, or whatever else. This is just the latest one of that, Tom.
But people need to realize what they want to do is this: you cannot call somebody else. You need to stay on the line with us until you get to the Chehalis.
Hang on a second. Hang on. I'm getting some text here, Tom. Josh out in the 360 says he had the exact same call. So everybody, if you get a call saying it's from which county is it, Tom? Which county said this? Which sheriff? Lewis County. If you're getting a call from any county sheriff that says you need to go to jail and you need to stay on the line with them, do not believe them at all. Tom, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Mike, I am getting raked on the text line for this JP Patches clown thing. Rightfully so, Mike says. Look how excited he is about this. He's getting the headphones already.
Oh, yeah. You play dumb games and you win dumb prizes. I'll spare you the embarrassment of the argument you had with Mr. KVI earlier, where you were talking about some clown in Chicago, like Patch Adams or something.
Patch Adams.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's a West Coast thing. No, my friend, it's a specifically Seattle thing.
Specifically Seattle. Yes. Pardon my ignorance. Yeah. And Mike's right. I have lived here for 20 years, so I don't get to claim ignorance anymore. You know who else doesn't?
Well, you can claim willful ignorance all you like.
Oh, willful ignorance I will claim all day long. That's what I got. Speaking of ignorance, how can the federal government or the people who are in the federal government continue to claim ignorance when you look at all the ridiculous waste, fraud, and abuse that is being uncovered? So here's something, and this is from the new OMB director, Russ Vaught. Let's not forget, they're kind of the ones who were Doge before there was Doge, and you kind of wonder what this department was doing up until now. Give a listen.
We've seen rampant waste everywhere. And it's both in our foreign policy. It's, the housing department making the city of Los Angeles do an equity audit. It's a preschool program for curricula. It's literally designed for nothing other than to put CRT curricula in preschools for 4-year-olds. We see that everywhere, and it's not just is it wasteful, is it maddening, it's divisive, and we're putting an end to it. Promises made, promises kept.
Yeah, what about criminal? Is it criminal?
And I think you would hear that fraudulent, right? I mean, it is insane, and that's the kind of thing the American people would rather be burned in the parking lot than to go to.
So what happens?
So this is the stuff we're wasting money on. This is stuff we're spending, which means that the left, anytime they were in power, they were the ones who were pushing to spend money on this kind of stuff, using the American people to do it. You want to know why those omnibus spending packages are so bad? So they could authorize the money in order to do it. But now we have Doge. And last night, Jesse Waters from Fox News sat down with Doge. And one of the first things he asked was for Elon Musk to expose his big balls. By that, I mean, who is actually the Doge member they call Big Balls?
Big balls.
It's me. That should be obvious.
Why do they call you Big Balls?
I just said it as my LinkedIn username.
Okay.
Well, people on LinkedIn take themselves like super seriously, and they're pretty adverse to risk. And I was like, well, I want to be neither of those things. So I said it, and honestly, I didn't even think anyone would notice.
Yeah. So what do you
LinkedIn
do?
is so cringe.
What does Big Balls do?
Right now, I'm working on some payment computer stuff. So one of our initiatives is to root out fraud and waste. And to do that, we started looking at the payment computers. And as mentioned earlier, like there is no accounting of what payments actually go to in the payment computer. So like you look at a specific line item, like $20 million, and you're like, okay, well, what is this money going to? And for the majority of payment systems, it's like, well, we don't really know. And
yeah, they're like, what? That would be the response.
Is this the most basic responses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most common response.
What do you say when people just say, I don't know?
Well, it's a huge cause for concern because like the upstream thing, which is distributing the money, literally has no checks and no accountability to the actual American taxpayer. So it's a huge vector for fraud, waste, and abuse.
Do you know that for the RNC, when we went out there, I didn't feel like filling out the form to get reimbursed for my expenses for my kosher food because it was too much of a hassle with my company. I just ate it because that's how insane the forms are we have to fill out to get reimbursed for just in this company. The federal government's like, oh, sure, you want to get reimbursed? We don't even need to justify what it's for. Think about what you need to fill out to get reimbursed from your company. And then the federal government is just, sure, let's just give out the money. No problem. We'll just give out all the money. And would you like to know the kind of stuff they found that they were spending this stuff on?
I think the Inter-American Foundation, IAF, is one of the agencies we visited where, they get $50 million a year, congressional money, to give grants. These are things like, alpaca farming in Peru, improving
that's a real example.
Yes, that's the real description. Improving the marketability of peas in Guatemala.
Really?
Fruit jam. Yes.
What? Yeah.
So you might expect, in the private sector, a nonprofit to give, 80 to 90% of their money to grantees. In the case of IAF, that was 58%. So the other half goes towards management, travel.
What would define exactly? I mean, to Ethan's example is that even if you agreed with supporting alpaca farmers in Peru. Well, actually, most of the money never made it out of D.C. Mm-hmm. It's going into the pockets of people in the neighborhood.
What percentage?
And didn't even get to Peru.
Right. So what percentage do you think doesn't even get to the destination it's supposed to?
I believe the GAO estimate, so this is not our estimate, I believe it was on the order of only 10 to 15 cents on the dollar actually gets to the end recipient, whether you agree with that cause or not.
So they're just stealing the money before it even gets anywhere.
There's layers of stealing. So there's the first layer of stealing, second layer of stealing, third layer of stealing.
Subcontractor.
Peeling the onion. Yeah, exactly. Contractor, subcontractor. It's like peeling an onion. And then maybe, and sometimes it's zero. Just flat. You get to the bottom of the onion, there's nothing there.
So maybe no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
It's possible that no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
So here's the thing with that. There's an organization in town that somebody asked me to give money to once. And I looked at their numbers, and I said 60 cents out of every dollar for this nonprofit goes to overhead. Why wouldn't I give it to somewhere where my money actually goes to a cause that I'm trying to support as opposed to the overhead? You know, you want to help homeless people. You want to help drug addicts. You want to, whatever, save the earth. You want your money going to the cause, not to actual overhead. And along the way, they are taking little pieces and little pieces and little pieces. A lot of these government agencies were the ones who were tasked with solving problems, but instead they were more interested in trips for their employees. Listen to what they were spending this money on.
So we normally go around the table, say, what do we get done this week?
Want to go this way?
Sure. No, we start with you.
Sure. So actually, a lot of great work at the Treasury this week. One of the crazy things with regards to the Treasury is that when a payment is made, and the computers at the Treasury actually pay about $5 trillion per year, like crazy amounts, there was formerly not a budget code on there. So if a payment was made, you didn't know actually what it was for. It could have been for anything. Yeah. There was a $4 billion COVID fund in the Department of Education. And there was no receipts required, so people could just draw down on it. And when people looked into it, this wasn't us, this was before us, they found that money was being used to rent out Caesar's Palace for parties, rent out stadiums, et cetera. And so the one change that DOJ made with the Department of Education is we had the simple requirement that if you draw down money, you must first upload a receipt. That was the only change that was made. You must upload your receipt. And upon doing so, yes, nobody drew down any money anymore.
Yes, but we didn't say that we'd check the receipt. You could send a fake receipt. You could send a picture of your dog. Anything. And but as soon as we asked for anything at all, suddenly the requests were like, oh, we don't need it anymore. Huh, that's interesting.
They were renting Caesar's Palace.
Yes, they were like basically partying on the taxpayer money.
Stadiums.
Yes.
Leasing stadiums. For what?
For parties, basically.
For parties?
Yes.
That's a big party.
It's a big party.
You'd think if you were stealing, you'd start small.
They do start small. But then what happens is over the years, so generally the fraud starts out small and they try to hide it. But then year after year, if nobody stops the fraud, it gets more and more brazen. And every year it gets bigger until they're literally renting out stadiums. What's that, $1 million
to rent out a stadium?
Fraud in flagrante delicto, okay? We're talking at scale.
I'm a curious guy. And a lot of times when I'm wandering in downtown or near the stadiums when I used to work in the Georgetown area, whatever the case may be, there'd always be these conferences going on all the time. And I'm always kind of curious, like, who's this conference for? Who's this convention for? And I'd say at least 50% of the time, if not more, it's a tech company here in Seattle. But the rest of the time, it was usually something government related. And I can never figure out why they're spending money on nicer conventions than the tech companies were having. Well, now we've got our answer. But it wasn't just live people who were scamming the system so they could get these really nice conferences. Turns out a lot of dead people were getting money also.
We checked, is the Small Business Administration giving loans to dead people over the age of 120? The answer was yes, and it was around $330 million in total.
So people with a birthday that could not possibly be real.
Yeah.
Meaning they're over 100. They're 115 years old or older. The oldest living American is 114. So it's safe to say if anybody is in the system as 115 years or older, that is fake.
So just by sharing a database and looking at Social Security numbers that showed that at the time of the loan, they had listed as over 115 years old, or actually under 11. We didn't even check for under 18.
Babies and dead
under 11 years old. That's pretty clear.
Babies
right?
and dead people who are getting loans.
That was $660 million.
And also people with birth dates in the future.
What does that mean?
Well, in one case, I mean, I think the birth date, I think in one case was like
fetuses were getting loans.
No, not even. No, really sort of You're talking about like your great grandchildren, like with the birth date, like I think it was like 2165. So more than a century from now was the birth date.
George Jetson was getting paid.
Yes, because your birthday is in the future, like the far future, not like next year.
Right.
And this is either fraudulent or we have your birthday wrong.
It's either a typo or someone stealing.
Which is it? Yes.
Right.
Yes. You should at least ask, which is it?
And somebody who's an expert on when babies are coming is Elon Musk. That guy knows. So this is the guy to do all the researching and the checking of that. But there is something. Thank you. Undeserved, but thank you. But there is something worse than your money going to dead people. It's your money going to terrorist organizations.
Called the United States Institute of Peace. It's definitely the agency we had the most fight at. We actually went into the agency and found that they had loaded guns inside of their headquarters. Institute for Peace.
I mean, any given company, any given organizational name is going to be kind of be the opposite of the title.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was by far the least peaceful agency that we've worked with, ironically.
Of course.
Additionally, we found that they were spending money on things like private jets, and they even had a $130,000 contract with a former member of the Taliban. This is real. We don't encounter that at most agencies.
Yeah.
What was the money going to the Taliban for?
So it was a contractor. They received $130,000 for generic services. And to Elon's point, there was not actually a clear description of what the contractor services were for.
Generic services for a former member of the Taliban. Was he an informant? Was he in witness protection? Were you paying him to off other Taliban members? Or were you saying, please, Mr. Taliban, don't do anything bad. Please don't do anything. We're going to pay you not to be a terrorist. Hey, Bill Clinton and crew paid North Korea not to develop nuclear weapons. Look how that worked out. Barack Obama, Joe Biden paid Iran not to develop nuclear weapons. Look how that worked out. I wonder if they were just paying one terrorist not to be a terrorist anymore. This is the stuff they found so far. You know, with Washington Doge, the amount of stuff we found, there's so much more out there, and I'm glad there's more volunteers who I've never even spoken to, never even met, who are revealing more and more stuff. I actually have a stack of stuff to go through over the weekend. I'm getting so much stuff sent to me. I can't even keep up with the amount of waste just in our Washington government. How much more waste is there in the federal government with all these different departments? We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Stilgar in Tequila. Stilgar, what's up, man?
Well, first of all, the thought occurs that maybe for $130,000 he was tallying the bananas.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah, what's up, man?
Well, so, I would hoped that the days of the unforced error on Donald Trump were kind of done, but end of World War II day and World War I is over day.
Yeah. Let me explain this, Stilgar, for the people who don't know. Hang on.
Day is wonderful.
Hang on. I'm gonna let you finish, Stilgar. Let me explain it, because actually a coworker of ours came over and wanted to discuss this today, and she had a very legitimate point. So Donald Trump put out a tweet. What do you call it on Truth Social? But he put out a post, and what he said was he wants to have two different holidays, and he wants to change Veterans Day back to, what is it, Victory Day, where it's because Veterans Day was originally established. Right. It was originally established as Armistice Day for the end of World War I. Then we had a different day in May, which was for the end of World War II. Now, for Donald Trump to say, hey, I want to go back to Veterans Day actually recognizing World War I specifically and all our veterans, that's fine. But we know that Donald Trump just kind of shoots from the hip on these things. So a lot of people said, are you getting rid of Veterans Day? Is that what you're talking about? And a lot of people were upset by this, and I think you're right. I think it's an unforced error where you could have said, hey, I love Veterans Day. We love our veterans. We want to keep celebrating it, but I don't want to lose the reason why this was established. Let me give you a little history lesson. And Mike and I, how many times have we said on Veterans Day, we celebrate this because of the end of World War I, because of Armistice Day? A lot of people don't know the history. So a lot of people don't know the history are immediately confused. But Stilgar, even somebody like you who does know the history, it's still giving us kind of a squishy feeling, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, Gulf of America, great. Just leave the good stuff alone. It seems like he's kind of two minds. You got his renaming Fort Bragg, et cetera, and I'm down with that. Because the renaming was something seemingly more the other side does.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm not cool with it. And
Yeah.
if I've got another second, the Sound Transit thing, man, we just need to kill it with fire. It just needs to be done. You know, if we're close to the end of something, finish it, but don't start anything new.
Yeah, I would agree.
The West Seattle thing, forget it. It's never going to pay. It's never going to work. It's never going to pay off. They're never going to finish it. And it's just stupid on top of stupid with money we don't have.
Exactly. And don't we have buses? Plus, how's those bridges doing to West Seattle? Last time I checked, they weren't in the best of shape. Now you want to put a train on top of it? Stilgar, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, Washington Attorney General Nick Brown is now giving advice to illegal immigrant criminals about how to avoid ICE. We'll have that insanity for you when we come back. But first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:45 is your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 gift card, plus so much more. Yeah, another reason to always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Remember when we had Tom Homan, who got asked yesterday about whether or not he was going to arrest officials, elected officials, for violating immigration law? I've got somebody for you here, Tom. Attorney General Nick Brown of Washington. He put out a tweet thread this morning. Now available, a Know Your Rights flyer on civil immigration enforcement in 19 languages. Please share it with your friends, family, and community. What is this thing? It's telling you the rights he thinks you have against ICE. Now, I'm not sure he's entirely legally correct on this. With regard to citizens, yeah, you actually do have these rights because you're citizens. With regards to permanent residents, workers, students on student visas, it's a squishy area. And the reason it's a squishy area is because a lot of stuff was passed after 9/11 in response to terrorism that now a lot of this stuff actually has to be litigated that may not have been litigated before. One of the reasons Donald Trump made all these gangs terrorist organizations is because he knew he could do a lot of stuff using the anti-terrorist stuff after 9/11. But Attorney General Nick Brown puts out all these posts, and what's the first one he lists? Not Spanish, Arabic. Arabic's the first one. Now, he puts out all these other languages, and he buries Spanish way, 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 way down at the bottom. And you know what this reminded me of? Bob Ferguson. When Bob Ferguson was AG, do you remember what case he fought the Trump administration on? The travel ban, which wasn't a travel ban. The Muslim ban, as he called it, which wasn't a Muslim ban. What was it? It was designed to keep terrorists out from countries where we couldn't verify who were people coming across until there was a system to verify them and make sure they weren't terrorists. The fact that Nick Brown is going down the exact same road that Bob Ferguson did is a little scary. You know, the story finally went national this week, and we did it 3 weeks before everybody else. Do you remember this, Mike? Right before Passover, Bob Ferguson signed 2 Muslim holidays as official holidays of Washington State, not Passover, and then he reposted the same tweet again before Easter. He didn't make Easter a recognized holiday, but he made these 2 Muslim holidays. Bob Ferguson is a guy who has been honored by the Council for American Islamic Affairs, the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARE. You know, the ones who are linked to Hamas, the ones who are an unindicted co-conspirator of the Holy Land Foundation, the largest terror trial in U.S. history. I sound like a broken record. I have this monologue memorized because I've had to say it so many times. You're literally talking about Hamas's branch here in America who are up to their eyeballs in terrorist activity, who recently settled a lawsuit rather than open their books to the other side that would have revealed their sources of funding. These are the guys who supported Bob Ferguson. These are the guys who donate to Bob Ferguson. These are the guys who honored Bob Ferguson at their dinner. And now it seems like Nick Brown is going down the exact same road. You know what we have to do? I think I saw a few of the donors from CARE that Bob Ferguson had also donating to Nick Brown. I'm going to pull up his donations. I'm going to see who's backing this guy. I knew Nick Brown was bad news. I did. We liked Pete Serrano. We still like Pete Serrano. And we knew Nick Brown was bad news, but our efforts were really going into taking down Bob Ferguson, and unfortunately we failed. So now it's time to do a deeper dive into Nick Brown. Yeah, we know he was on Survivor, but really we need to look up who his donors were/are, because it seems like he's doing the exact same things. And putting the Muslim one right up top there, that's obviously trying to hide the Spanish ones down at the bottom somewhere. Did you think nobody would notice this there, Nick? Yeah, he's getting ratioed pretty hard over on social media. You could head on over to on X, AGOY, and tell him what you think also. When we come back, my friends, lots more to discuss. We are going to get into the latest news of the day with our friend Lars Larson. What else has Doge uncovered, and what has piqued Lars's interest? Lars will be unleashed when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. My friends, one of my favorite parts about working here at Talk Radio 570 KVI is getting to talk to my friend Lars Larson every single week. Lars, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well, Ari, and I think the country is going to be doing well too. It's great to see that we've got some great improvements. I know there are hits in the economy, but the Trump team is doing a very good job.
I was thrilled this week when I saw that the Trump administration has apparently now taken an interest in the Pacific Northwest, especially with regard to Washington State, where they're saying to creepy Chris Rakedahl, hey, if you don't stop this nonsense you're doing and give parents back their rights and let them have access to their own kids, then you know what? We're going to take away your funding. The other thing they're talking about is removing funding for sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, and it looks like they're coming to the aid, the rescue of the sheriffs locally that want to enforce the law, but their counties or the state is telling them not to.
Well, and in fact, before we get to Pierce County and Tacoma, let me mention something you just spurred a thought. Tom Homan yesterday was asked, well, are you going to go out and arrest sanctuary city leaders? And he said, wait till you see what's coming. And I thought, well, that's kind of a broad hint to say, are they going to go out and start taking action? And I hope they do. Just like the judge who got arrested in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for helping the illegal alien go out the back door. I think some of us would like to see some of these significant figures in the Northwest, both Oregon and Washington, who've stood up and said, we're going to defend illegal aliens. Great. If you're breaking the law, you're going to jail. And Homan has been suggesting that well back into last year.
Yeah, think about this for a second. They all raised their hands. They put their hands, the other hand, on something else, whatever that document was or book was, and swore to uphold the Constitution, and they are blatantly not. So the question is right now is, you know what's going to happen. Oh, woe is us, or oh, we're fighting Trump, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, they are breaking the law, and aren't they the ones who love to say nobody is above the law?
Yes, they do, including people like Letitia James. But think about this. When you ask somebody, where are your priorities? And I'm trying to remember who said, show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities, because your budget is indicative of your priorities. If you have a Porsche parked in the driveway and your kids have no shoes, don't tell me I love my kids to death. No, you don't, because you've got a Porsche in the driveway and your kids have no shoes. When the people running education in Washington State say we are more wedded to DEI and transgender nonsense, we're willing to give up tens of millions of dollars, which is supposed to go to the education of children, but we'll forfeit that to stick by our crazy ideals. What are they telling you about their priorities?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And think about this for a second. Think about Washingtonians' priorities. Do they actually care about their own income? Do they actually care about their families? Or are they going to say, we hate Trump so much, we'd rather be taxed to have that money made up by the Washington government, which, Lars, you know that could very well happen in King County and Pierce County and other places.
Yeah, it could. And think about what's happening. Contrast what's going on in Washington, D.C. There's been a lot of disparagement of the Doge crew, but think about this. At the U.S. Treasury, what they found was that $4.7 trillion had been sent out with no accounting identification on where that money was going or where it was being spent from. Now, I know that if Ari Hoffman walked down to the business office at KVI and he said, hey, the copier is out of paper, and we got to have some more paper, and we need it not next week, we need it now. Because the business office might say, well, there's a regular shipment coming in 10 days. I need the paper now. So you say, can I go down to Staples and get 2 reams of paper? And they say, well, but you're going to need a PO, a purchase order number. Why? Because next year when the accountants come in to look at the books at KVI, they're going to say, why'd you give $20 to Ari Hoffman on the 2nd of May? And they're going to say, well, he went to buy some paper. Well, there's no record of how that money was spent. Why should we believe that you actually spent it on that? That's what was happening at the U.S. Treasury, not for a little bit of money, but for $4.7 trillion. Well, as of this week, Treasury has now refused to make $300 million in payments in 1 week because they said, you're asking us to pay money. You're not identifying what pot of money the Congress appropriated that it's going to come from, and you're not indicating where it's going to. What are we buying with this money? So they simply said, we're not making the payments. I have a feeling the Doge crews say that they have found examples where federal bureaucrats have spent money where the money they were allocated for that purpose the budget was already spent. But they knew all they had to do was tell the Treasury, hey, cut a check to these guys. And Treasury, without question, without any kind of record keeping at all, would just send a check out the door.
That actually reminds me, they're talking about this one big, beautiful bill for Trump's agenda. But the problem is if Congress doesn't actually cut the money that was allocated to this stupidity, because they didn't read any of these bills. So there's allocated funds, there's unallocated funds. Everything that Doge did, it may all just come rushing back. It may be temporarily paused. But unless they actually say, hey, we're cutting this stuff because Congress controls the purse strings, everything Doge may have done may be for nothing.
Well, in fact, that's the question I've been asking members of Congress when they're on the show is if Doge has found all these things where money was being spent inappropriately, how about having the U.S. Congress say, if you spent $400 million on some stupid purpose that's not legitimate, then we're cutting $400 million out of that budget. You're right. That does need to happen right now.
Yeah, the question is, when's it going to happen? So I was in D.C. this week, and the Capitol tour, in my opinion, is the most boring tour I've ever been on in D.C. There are tons of other things. So I knew this going in. I took what's called the photo op tour. They take you up to the rotunda. You take 5 or 6 pictures. They take you back downstairs. The whole thing's 20 minutes. That's really it. And I thought that was still boring. But you know what? It's a faster way to see the Capitol tour. And I'm thinking to myself, these guys are here every day. They're in session. What are they doing all day? And we control both chambers.
I've asked that before because it seems to me that, the impression from the outside is the U.S. government is capable of handling one thing at a time. It's like, we're working on this. And you go, when are you going to get to these other 5 or 6 issues? And they say, we can't do that till we're done with this. And you have 535 of you organized into dozens of committees. Is it not possible, just like a family would show up to go camping, something as simple as that? They say, okay, Junior, you go set up the tent. Mom, we'll set up the cook stove here. You start getting lunch ready. To the smaller kids, go out and gather some firewood. Grandma, you sit in a chair. You've done your part throughout life. You don't have to work. And Dad will unload the cooler with the soda pop and the beer. That everybody has a job. And yet it seems as though the Congress just says we're all frozen in place until we've made this one decision about something. And I don't get the impression those 535 are working their tails off. They're like some big corporation that has too many vice presidents. There's the vice president of everything. And you go, what do these people actually do? Well, they occupy space and draw a paycheck. That's what they do.
I think it's even worse than that. I think a lot of them just want to do what you and I do rather than being elected officials. So they'd rather do social media or they'd rather do podcasts or whatever the case may be. And I'm sitting there, anytime I see an advertisement for Ted Cruz's podcast, which I hear is very good.
But don't get me started on Ted Cruz, because I think that's actually illegal, because members of Congress are not supposed to be earning money on the side. And yet here he is. Here's a podcast. If you want to be in good with Ted, maybe you'll buy some commercials on his podcast. I think that is, if we're going to complain about Nancy Pelosi and her insider trading, we should take a look at Ted Cruz and say, why is this guy running a radio show in which you and I both know book deals are one of those other things where I go out and write a book. I've not done that. And then somebody who wants to get in good with me, they say, I know how to get in good with Lars. Go buy 10,000 copies of his book. And you say, well, where am I going to get the money for that? Take it out of your campaign and say that you're going to send a copy of the book to your 10,000 top donors so you can legitimize the expenditure. And all you're really doing is putting a giant chunk of money in somebody's pocket. I don't go for those kind of illegitimate deals, and I haven't done them myself.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't done them either. You've been in the business a lot longer than me, so you have way more integrity.
Now
because I don't do it for
I'm old. He's reminding, because he's a little bit younger, he's reminding you that I'm aged.
Lars Larson.
2/3 of a century old, Ari. And
you can catch his show every single weekday from 12 to 3 right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Lars, have a great weekend, my friend.
And you as well. Take care.
Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news giveaway, your good news headlines, your chance to win a $50 gift card, plus so much more. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to our good news giveaway or our good news headlines, got an announcement. Just want to remind everybody about the 49th annual Puyallup RV Show that started yesterday and runs through Sunday. Explore over 400 new and used RVs, plus manufactured homes, park models, and destination trailers spread out across more than 20 acres. It's the last big RV event before summer, and your chance to compare over 1,000 floor plans from 15 top dealers all in one place. Enjoy a drink from the Pioneer Pub. Hop on the antique tractor pulled people mover. And if you need more time, grab a free return ticket from any dealer. There's free parking in the blue lot out at the Puyallup Fairgrounds. Tickets are available at PuyallupRVShow.com. That's PuyallupRVShow.com. And best part is we are going to be out there. Stop by the KVI tent, get KVI swag. We'll be there along with our sister stations, Northwest News Radio and 101.5 Hank FM. Mike and Mr. KVI himself are going to be out there on Saturday, and me and Phil are going to be out there on Sunday. I believe I am going to be there from 10-ish until around 12:30, 1 o'clock-ish on Sunday. Mike, what time are you going to be out there on Saturday?
Roll in around noon 30, maybe roll out about 4:30, give or take. Kind of square in the middle of the day. Mr. KVI will be there before me, and there'll be a little bit of overlap. You could come and get flags and stickers and pens and pencils and get the secrets of the Ari Hoffman Show. All you gotta do is, and the Big Mike Militia always shows up for these things. I love being mayor of the RV show. It's actually a lot of fun. It's gonna be a fun event.
It's always funny. I want to come out one time when we're actually together at these things and the Big Mike Militia shows up. Now, the militia always shows up in some way, shape, or form. But when I'm there, you get a mix, and I don't necessarily see all the people from the militia. I'm talking the people who are part of Ari's Army, whatever the case may be. But we want to see all of you out at the Puyallup RV Show this weekend. There are still tickets available. Get them now at PuyallupRVShow.com. That's PuyallupRVShow.com.
Parking is free in the blue lot, by the way.
Parking is free in the blue lot. I'm actually excited to go see all the off-roading vehicles. I know those always go along with the RV shows, so I want to check those out.
Oh, yeah, and you'll have like the ELEs, mammoth camper trailers.
Yeah.
They have a bulletproof RV, Ari.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You should check it out.
I do want to check that
Maybe
out.
a tactical golf cart. These are all things I saw at the
Don't
Seattle
threaten
RV
me
show,
with a good time. This all sounds awesome, by the way. Also, here's something else, some bit of local news. Seattle has made history again, according to Como News, scoring a hat trick, becoming the first city in the U.S. to host all three professional women's sports leagues. Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, Women's National Soccer League, NWSL, and now the Professional Women's Hockey Team. That's right, we are getting the 8th team in the league. That's going to be coming here. I believe they're going to be playing out of Climate Pledge Arena. So now, wait a second. I got a question, though. All right. So they're starting all these youth leagues, too, right? I assume they're separate gender, right? I'm just asking. All right. We'll deal with that later. But yeah, it's nice to have another professional sports team in town. Also, it helps fill the sports pages in the sports section of the Seattle Times. Before I forget, your chance to win fantabulous prizes. Today, we are giving away a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card. Daniel's Broiler has been a Seattle favorite since 1980. Features USDA prime steak and other specialties, including chicken and fresh seafood, as well as a selection of high-end spirits, wine, and cocktails. Daniel's Broiler is open now in Bellevue, downtown Seattle, Leschi, and South Lake Union, with dine-in, takeout, and delivery. Check out danielsbroiler.com to reserve a table, place your takeout, delivery order, and more. We're also giving away a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement and a bonus of the Little Red Book of Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs. Visit madronafinancial.com for more information and discover how you can create a rooted wealth plan today. Last but certainly not least, we are giving away 2 Atom passes to see Shadow Force. See Shadow Force in theaters on May 9th. Watch the trailer now at youtube.com. All you have to do in order to win these fantabulous prizes is be caller number 10 at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Caller number 10 will win a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement, and a bonus of the Little Red Book of Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, and 2 Atom passes to see Shadow Force. Phone lines are open now. Give Mike a call for your chance to win at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. That's going to do it for us today. Don't forget to come see us at the Puyallup RV Show this weekend. We'll be back on Monday with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and, of course, more giveaways. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.